All right, welcome to The Hill. So what does roughly $39 million buy in politics these days? That is what Donald Trump, who emerged from Trump Tower earlier today, says his campaign raised in the immediate hours after his guilty verdict.
This is a case where if they can do this to me, they can do this to anyone. These are bad people. These are, in many cases, I believe, sick people.
President Biden using the White House as his backdrop, defending the jury's decision and denouncing his rival's response.
Donald Trump was given every opportunity to defend himself, and it's reckless, it's dangerous, it's irresponsible for anyone to say this was rigged just because they don't like the verdict.
Coming up here on The Hill, we are following the money and looking at where both candidates go from here. Plus, the government dropping some major news for Amazon and how they can deliver packages to your home, and who did and did not just show up at the White House at today's Kansas City Chiefs celebration. You see some of it there. Come on in. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. All right, here we go on this Friday afternoon. Hanging out with us today, Laura Fink is a Democratic strategist. Nan Hayworth, the former Republican congresswoman from the state of New York. Stephanie Rawlings Blake is the former mayor of the city of Baltimore, also the former secretary of the Democratic National Committee. Mark Lotter is the former special assistant to President Trump. And joining us remotely today as well throughout the show, Mick Mulvaney, former Trump White House chief of staff, NewsNation contributor. We'll get to Mick in a second. And the former Democratic congressman from New York. Hello, Max. I think in our studio there, in our headquarters in New York. Max, thanks for being here with us. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in. So yesterday at this time, we were all trying to dissect the verdict. What does it mean? Donald Trump, what's he saying? Alvin Bragg was going to be talking, so on and so forth. Today, we heard from the top two, both Donald Trump first in the morning and then President Biden after that. Mark, Nan, I'll start with you because it was interesting the way that Trump went about this, because he made the case, if this could happen to me, it could happen to you. Yeah. He talked about immigration. He talked about crime. He also talked a lot about the details of the case, Mark, which I found to be a bit odd. Is he going to continue to relitigate this case going forward? Was that just a today thing? What's the strategy? What's he going to be focusing on?
I think he probably will to a certain extent while they go through the appeals process and leading up to the sentencing, and just reminding some people, because again, he couldn't talk about the case. I think he pushed it to about as far as he could with talking about the case and not following under the gag order. But really, I know we're going to get into it, but the fundraising numbers, I think, were the big story of the day.
What does $39 million get you? We're going to break it down here soon.
30% of the donors, 1/3 of the donors, first-time donors, and this is a third presidential run for him. So we have a lot of data and a lot of volunteers and a lot of information, and so 1/3 of those people, that's a big deal.
Nan, what'd you make of him sort of relitigating this today?
It's President Trump's way of dealing with things. I think he does tend to rehash things, processes that have disappointed him. I understand, as Mark said, why he might want to do that, why he would certainly want to do that when it's a very difficult case to understand. And if you don't understand the details of the case, you might well think, well, the justice system has done its job. Not really. But I hope that in coming days he will use his precious time, which may be somewhat limited in public, to emphasize the issues that are winners for all of us and the issues on which he's a winner.
Mulvaney, come on in. I think your shot's up and ready. It's the first time I've talked to you, Mick Mulvaney, former Trump White House chief of staff, since this. Hello, Mick, live in the Conch Republic. It's the first time I've spoken to you since this verdict. Donald Trump coming out today and making the comments that he did. I found it interesting, Mick, that the very first thing that he said, quite literally, was, if this could happen to me, it could happen to you. And then he went on to immigration, crime, but also relitigated the last 5 or 6 weeks. What did you take away from him today, Mick?
Berman, first things first. When I'm in Key West, I'll be wearing a Hawaiian shirt. You know that. I'm home in South Carolina. Look, the message that he...
Okay, excuse me.
The message that he delivered today is exactly what he's been doing for the last year since these charges first came down. It's look at what they're doing to me. I'm rich, I'm famous, I'm white. If they could do it to me, imagine what they could do to you. Vote for me, and I'll make sure that doesn't happen. That's been working for him for the last 12 months. He's not going to change it. In fact, he's going to take this negative. I mean, face it, there's no way that a criminal conviction is a good thing in any universe, but he's going to try and take that negative and turn it into a positive. It's exactly what I expected to see today. And Nan's right. This is sort of what this is his therapy, right? This was his opportunity today at the press conference to go out and say everything that he wanted to say in the courthouse but wasn't able to do. He had to get this stuff off of his chest. Critically, I think the speech today or the presentation today wasn't a speech. There was no text. There were no teleprompters. This was him winging it for half an hour. So it's exactly what I expect. This is the first day of the rest of the campaign. What you saw today is what you're going to see for the 5 months.
So if this was the first day of what you're going to see from Donald Trump, what about President Biden? Because earlier today, he gave a statement in the White House about Israel and the war between Israel and Hamas, a possible ceasefire plan. We're going to get to that later in the show. But here is what President Biden first, we played some of the sound of what he first said. And then afterwards, he was asked by reporters how all of this he could potentially play politically. And here was President Biden earlier today.
Donald Trump refers to himself as a political prisoner and blames you directly. What's your response to that, sir? Do you think the conviction will have an impact on the campaign?
Okay, so he initially did not respond, but then show that graphic that we just popped up, because moments ago the president was basically asked the same question, and here's what he was asked. A reporter at the White House asked him, do you think this conviction helps Trump in the election? President Biden, quote, I have no idea. The reporter asks, are you worried this could happen to you someday? And the president says, not at all. I didn't do anything wrong. The system still works. All right, over to the Democrats. Max Rose, come on in as well. Stephanie, Laura. Stephanie, I'll start with you. The president today, he had to address this at some point. The White House put him in a position to where he could address it off the top of a essentially foreign policy speech. Do you think that was on purpose for them to say, I'm the president, I'm acting presidential, here I am in the White House, I'm not like that guy?
I think they did the best they could with what was on the schedule for today. They didn't plan the jury verdict, so they worked with what they had. But if I'm the president, if I'm around the president and I'm seeing the numbers that came in off of Trump's fundraising last night, I would be very concerned because Trump is wrong as he can be. Don't agree with anything he said, but he struck a nerve. He struck a chord with, unfortunately, too many people, in my opinion, that are now activated. And the Democrats, we don't have a mouthpiece that is doing that is striking that nerve, that is energizing our voters to that extent. And when you think about all the things that are on the line, it's unreasonable, it's unthinkable that we would not have someone that can get our supporters as passionate.
Is she on to something there? Because this is a White House and a campaign, by all accounts, that would rather have the president out there less, not more.
I think I have a little bit of more patience with the message developing, because what we saw today was Donald Trump spending 99% of his time, 30 minutes plus, talking about himself, his grievances. He wasn't talking about the retail worker that's working 2 jobs and who can't afford health care. He wasn't talking about the hotel worker out in Clark County, Nevada, who can't pay for groceries. He was talking about himself and his grievances. And the more that Trump does that, the less that he is persuasive to those voters who voted for Biden in 2020 that now he has to get back. So I'm giving Biden a break on this one, because there's nothing he can really say to persuade people that people are going to think what they want to think. And Donald Trump was convicted on 34 counts, and that's what he has to contend with.
Max, where are you? Because Laura's basically saying Trump's out there talking about things that voters don't necessarily care about. Stephanie's saying, you know what, we need someone a little bit more passionate.
Gosh, my Republican brothers and sisters are really something else with this one. I cannot imagine one human being who today is saying, man, I wasn't with Donald Trump, but once he got convicted on 34 felony counts, I had to be on his side. That's not the way people react to convicted felons. But of course, the Republican cognitive dissonance here and their level of hypocrisy knows no bounds. what are they going to say in regards to Hunter Biden? If Hunter Biden is convicted, is that political? These are folks that purportedly run on law and order.
On the other side, Max, I hear President Biden absolutely slammed the Department of Justice and his White House during the Hur report. I hear Democrats go after the Supreme Court and all the trouble that's there. So, it is on both sides.
Well, no, it's interesting. You can say that it is on both sides in regards to whether or not charges themselves are justified. In some ways, I can actually understand that argument. But this is taking it one step further, because now they are going to war with the actual verdict decision made by a jury. That is the very bedrock of our legal system. The last time that people claimed that northern juries were incapable of rendering impartial decisions, that was an argument led by southern segregationists. If you claim to be law and order, then you have got to get behind the rulings of juries, because that, again, is the foundation of our system.
All right. So the money, which we've talked about, the verdict, caused an overwhelming flow of small donor donations. As of 11 o'clock this morning, Donald Trump said his campaign raised $39 million since the guilty verdict. Now, President Biden's campaign also leveraged the verdict to raise money, but has not yet revealed its fundraising haul. So what exactly can $39 million buy you in politics these days? Well, we looked into it. For example, in 2020, Donald Trump's campaign spent basically that exact number for its fundraising apparatus. It's a large number, no doubt about it, but also a fraction of the roughly $500 million it spent on all forms of media, which made up about 2/3 of its campaign spending. Right now, for example, take a look at this. According to Ad Impact, Democrats have reserved up to $133 million in ad buys this fall for the presidential election, while it is non-existent, at least as it stands at this moment, for Republicans. All right, Mulvaney, $40 million bucks. I sort of laid some of it out there. How significant is this for Republicans and specifically for Donald Trump?
I'm going to say something politicians aren't supposed to say, which is it doesn't matter how much money it is. To Max's point, are there people out there who didn't want to vote for Donald Trump 2 days ago but are today? Here's what you need to look at. Not the amount of money. Who is it coming from? Who is it coming from? Is it the same people who've already given him before but are giving him more now? That would be really good, by the way, and that gets to your $39 million. There's a lot you can do with that. But if these are new donors, now these are people who have not given to Donald Trump in the past, but have come off the hip now because they see him as a victim, that is a tectonic sort of shift and would undermine what my good friend Max just said. So let's see where the money is coming from more than how much money is out there.
Well, and as you would know so well, Mick, these are small dollar donors. These are not people writing Max checks. So what you're going to see is that person that donated $10, $20, and you know so well, we were on the campaign together. The Trump team is really good about going back for more. And so they will come back with you with a text message and an email and all of these things, which will then suddenly make that $10 and $20 donor in the last 24 hours, $20 going forward, and it's a recurring $39 million because
you don't know that it's going to be recurring, but
over time you're likely to give, maybe not, but over time you're likely to get more money from.
So the Biden campaign had a decision to make today, which was say how much they raised or not. And clearly they made the decision not to reveal how much they raised because they had been fundraising off it too. We can show the graphic. President Biden, for example, posting, Donald Trump is threatening our country, and goes so on and so forth, save democracy, stop Trump, and go on and donate. You can probably see the graphic here. So the Biden campaign not saying how much they raised today, concerning to you?
It's not concerning because Biden's fundraising is outpacing Trump's fundraising overall. I mean, I think you just showed that graphic. So the fact that he's not talking about today doesn't bother me. The fact that we're not focused on where these potential new Trump supporters are, like that's to me where we need to be laser focused. We know this race is in the margins. There's such a small number. We have to zero in on those people who said that they would not support Trump if he were convicted. Where are those people? Are we talking to those people? And I think we really need to start doing things differently. You talk about the text messages and the emails. I really feel like if we are saying democracy is at stake, we need to start, I think, going old school, knocking on doors, telephone trees. Like we need to do things differently so people can understand understand this is a different situation if we are saying, as we are saying, that democracy is at stake.
All right. Well, Max, Mick, stick around. Still to come here from the Hill over the next 45 minutes. Could you imagine a world in which your Amazon package is delivered by drone? The government, would you believe it, just made that one step closer to reality. Plus, is this the end of the war between Israel and Hamas? Could that potentially be in sight? Some new movement this afternoon, the very latest out of Washington. But first, on the other side of the break, Hot Mic with Mick. Mulvaney tells us what he's hearing, what he's thinking in the state of South Carolina. Now I know, not in Key West. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation. We're back in a few. Welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. Come on back in, Mulvaney. Time now for Hot Mic with Mick, the former congressman, budget director, White House chief of staff, tells us what he's hearing, what he's thinking. All right, Mulvaney, there is another high-profile court case set to begin next week. Hunter Biden facing felony charges for allegedly lying about his drug use when he purchased a firearm. Mick, as you know, this is the first time ever that a child of a sitting president will be a criminal defendant. How do you expect both Donald Trump, the White House, President Biden to deal with this over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I thought Max made a really good point in the first segment about, what are the Republicans going to say when this comes down or if it comes down as guilty? I've never understood the importance of this particular case. We all know, because he's admitted it, that Hunter Biden was a drug addict, and drug addicts do awful things. So I don't know why this has become such a centerpiece. The materials that are on the laptop, the way that story was handled by the press, that I get. But I don't understand why this has become a central feature of some of the Republicans' sort of focus on the Biden administration. It's one of those things, I guess, you're sort of darned if you do and darned if you don't. And darn is not the right word I want to use, but I don't know if I can use that word on television. But I think the Republicans have to be very, very careful here in spiking the football if the conviction comes down against Hunter Biden.
Max, since Mick name checked you, if Hunter Biden is convicted, are we going to hear the White House and the Democrats? The White House yesterday said no comment, essentially, to Donald Trump. Is it going to be respect the judicial system and move on?
Well, it's always fun to hear my friend Mick try to curse with that Southern charm. That was very adventurous of you, my friend. Look, I hate to do this, but this speaks to the utter, incredible hypocrisy of the Republican Party and the fact that at this point the Democratic Party is rising above the fray. If Donald Trump can go out there and scream and yell about how the judicial system is against him and how everything is rigged against him, and when someone is going after their own son, Joe Biden is standing up and saying, let the judicial system play out. I believe in our system. I'm a father. For all those fathers out there know that they would much rather someone go after themselves than go after their son. And still, Joe Biden is not buying into this notion of a rigged system because he is not selfish and he is putting the country first. And that is everything that voters have to know about this election.
I think Max makes a lot of really good points. This is a dangerous place for Republicans to be. I mean, how would it look if Hunter does get convicted and Republicans sort of beat their chest and say, oh, look at this. At the same time, they're trying to not accept the verdict in the case in Manhattan. I get the argument that the case in Manhattan should never have been brought. I think that is a very, very valid argument. But to mix that with the Hunter Biden case, I think is a dangerous place for Republicans to be.
Okay. All right. Now, Mick, pushback against Donald Trump's guilty verdict is escalating. 8 Republican senators now announcing they will oppose any increase in non-security funding and will not vote on any political or judicial nominees the president puts forward. In a separate rebuke, the COO at the RNC responded to Republican Senate candidate from Maryland, Larry Hogan, quote, "You just ended your campaign," after Hogan urged Americans to respect the verdict and legal process. What's going on here, Mick, with congressional Republicans and the Trump team?
Yeah, I got a lot of emails on this today, a lot of texts from folks, a lot of fundraising emails from Republicans on this very issue saying, if we accept the verdict, then we're losing the country. Now, look, I think this was a political show trial. I think it was a kangaroo court. I get all of that. But this angle about not accepting a verdict, what does that mean? Does it mean that we're supposed to go to the streets? Does it mean we're supposed to do civil disobedience? I appreciate what the senators did. I think it's probably a part of a good message. But when you look at what they actually said, it didn't make it clear when that was going to stop. Is it going to go forever? Or is it going to go for the rest of the Biden term? What if Biden wins re-election? Does that mean that those senators are not going to vote for any appropriations bills or any judges at all going forward? Right. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But don't understand what Republicans mean when they say that if we accept the verdict, our career is over, or that we need to not accept the verdict. I don't understand how that manifests itself into action. I've not heard anybody articulate it properly yet.
Mick, with some questions here about his own party, about Republicans. I might get you here to take a swing at Democrats, I think, because you just wrote an article about the economy and taxes. All big issues for voters this presidential election. Your new column, here it is in The Hill, titled, "Until We Agree on Some Basic Facts, Addressing the National Debt Will Be Tough." Explain yourself.
Oh, yeah. You want me to beat up on Democrats for a while? Hope
no,
Max is
I
still
don't,
watching.
but I think you might be headed there here. I read the article today.
By the way, I used to be pretty good at it. Now, this is the difficulty we have, and one of the reasons we're $35 trillion in debt is that we can't even agree on what the language means. There was an article in the New York Times last week that says that for the first time ever, rich people are paying a lower effective tax rate on their income than poor people. It's not false, but it's misleading. Half of the country doesn't pay any income tax. Yes, they do pay payroll tax. Everybody who has a paycheck pays a payroll tax. But what the left is doing is trying to mix those two things to make it look like the working poor are paying a higher level of income tax than the rich. It's just not factually accurate. And what it does is it gets everybody's emotions up, and you end up fighting over what the language means instead of trying to figure out a way to solve the problem. The point in the piece in The Hill today was this. Until we can start to agree on the language and start to agree on just basic facts and basic math, it's going to be impossible for us to fix this. And I hope the left comes to the table. And by the way, in the piece I said, I'd be more than happy to talk about income tax rates. I understand that if we're going to fix this, we're going to fix this with a combination of tax increases and spending cuts, because you're never going to get all tax increases or all spending cuts. There has to be a compromise at some point. But before we do that, we have to agree on the language.
Hot Mic with Mick. Thank you, sir. Still much more ahead here on The Hill. Is President Biden finally about to clamp down at the southern border? There is some new reporting on his plan to target the migrant crisis. Plus, is an end to the war between Israel and Hamas potentially in sight? New developments tonight coming out of both Washington and the Middle East as The Hill on NewsNation returns. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. The mother of the former First Lady Michelle Obama and mother-in-law to former President Barack Obama, Marianne Robinson, passed away earlier today at the age of 86. She was a staple, as you might remember, of the Obama White House after she moved from her hometown of Chicago to take care of her granddaughters. President Obama, remembering his mother-in-law, saying, quote, "There was and will only be one Marianne Robinson," while Michelle Obama also writing, quote, "My mom, Marianne Robinson, was my rock, always there for whatever I needed. She was the same steady backstop for our entire family, and we are heartbroken to share she passed away today. We want to offer some reflections on her remarkable life." Marianne Robinson, dead at the age of 86. All right, down now to the southern border. Meantime, the Associated Press is reporting that President Biden could take executive actions regarding the border as soon as Tuesday, so maybe at some point within the next handful of days or so. According to the AP, the changes could include elements from the bipartisan Senate deal and capping the number of encounters at an average of 4,000 per day over the course of a week. They also report the talks are still fluid and no final decision has been made. All right, so we've been hearing this story for a little while now, like the president might take action, it might come soon. The president might take action, those seem to be trial balloons. Is this happening? Do you think he's going to do this? And if so, why?
Let's keep in mind that he's been working with President Obrador in Mexico, and border crossings are now down significantly. And so the policy has to adjust to the circumstance. So I do think that he will come out, given that President Trump killed the bipartisan bill in the Senate and in the House, and he will address this issue.
So you think we're getting this in 4 days?
I think.
And is what I laid out enough, if that's indeed what it is? Because it still seems like they're negotiating this or trying to figure it out.
I don't think it'll ever be enough until we have a bipartisan solution. When Congress works, that's when it works for the people that they serve. So I think Biden is going to be forced to do something. Hopefully he'll do something in the next week or so. But it won't be the best thing for our country because it has not been hammered out across the aisle with people who are willing to do the hard work and make the tough votes so we can get better as a country.
You say make the tough votes. Is this a tough decision for him? Because the left, I think, will hammer him, right? The far left of the party will absolutely hammer the president if he does this. But the folks to the right of him or towards the center will say, Mr. President, we've been waiting for this for quite some time. And I think that's kind of the pickle that he's in, is he not?
We're a nation of immigrants. You want to have empathy for the people that have come with tragic stories, and you want to make room for that. And we've always had that in our justice system. And the question is, how do we process those claims? How do we regulate the border in a bipartisan and in a fair and humane way? And so, of course, that's a tough issue. These are the issues that are not simple. And when I see Republicans saying on the other side that they are and coming with sort of authoritarian momentum behind them, I don't think that's what the American people want. They want action on the border, but they don't want cruelty.
I agree totally.
If what I said is what we're getting.
Polling doesn't show that. No, he's not going to do anything. But let's also remember. You don't think so? You
think this is just?
It's going to be window dressing. I mean, he did this. He signed 94 executive actions in the first 100 days to wide open the border. We now have nearly 12 million illegal immigrants in 3.5 years. And to put that in perspective, 12 million legal immigrants came through Ellis Island over the course of 60 years, signed the book, and immigrated here into our country legally. He let nearly the same number in illegally in 3 years. Then not going to change it.
Why did the head of your party kill the bill that Republicans wrote?
He didn't. That's a lie.
Really?
Mike Johnson said it was DOA in the House before Donald Trump. The organization I work for.
I mean, Donald Trump had his hands on ending it.
The fact that he was aligned with Republicans is hardly unusual. We expect that.
Look, you could blame both sides, right? Like the Senate didn't take up H.R. 2. Then Donald Trump stepped in and the bipartisan deal, went kaput. So
it was not.
You could blame both sides here.
And your word blame is, I think, the problem. We can play the blame game, but when you get elected to Congress, it's not to fight, it's to work.
To govern.
To govern, to work, to get the things done. And this blame game, it's great. For Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, it gets you clicks, but it's not fixing the problems that face our country.
Okay. All right. Meantime, President Biden today presented a new Israel-Hamas ceasefire plan that he says would end the war.
And with this deal, Israel could become more deeply integrated in the region, including, it's no surprise to you all, including potential historic normalization agreement with Saudi Arabia. Hamas needs to take the deal.
Now, the Jerusalem Post is reporting that Hamas views this, quote unquote, positively. Also, this comes as back here in Washington, congressional leaders invited the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to speak before Congress. So that invitation is out. Mick, Max, come on back in. It seems like you had a lot happen today, right? Add it all up. The president puts forth this plan, goes before the cameras at the White House. Then you have reports from the Middle East that this is viewed positively. And, oh, by the way, the congressional leaders, Democrats and Republicans, have come out and said that Netanyahu is invited to speak before Congress. Mick, is that one thing on top of the next that's going to lead to something? Or is it, fool me once, shame on you, fool me however many times at this point, shame on me?
If I put my old chief of staff hat on, here's the answer to that question. It better work, or else the president's going to look really, really bad. If you're inside the West Wing, you better hope that this deal has been cut in advance, that you've reached out to both sides in advance, to both Hamas and to Israel, to say, is this going to be acceptable to you? Where are you on these types of things? You don't sort of float this out and have one or even worse for the president, both sides say, thank you, Mr. President, but no, because then you look extraordinarily weak. So
I wonder if they... I wonder if they put him out there today because they know that something is happening, and then you just saw the trickle come out throughout the day.
Sure, and if they take the deal and the president looks great, no one benefits. Well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of people benefit if we can get this war over, but politically in this country, no one will benefit more than Joe Biden if he can figure out a way to broker a deal to end the hostilities. But again, I'm not sure that just looking at something positively means that it's going to be acceptable to Hamas. We'll find out.
Max, when you add it all up, is there something there or not necessarily?
I think Mick's 100% right that they wouldn't have put him out there to talk about this if there wasn't a there. But I think we should also note here that there is a third pathway that our national security leaders are starting to speak about much more often, which is Israel transitioning to a real counterinsurgency mindset and gearing itself up for a much longer war in which it does everything possible to limit civilian casualties, everything possible to work by, with, and through partner forces. All of this sounds very familiar because it's, of course, what the United States did in at least the second half of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I don't think any talk of ceasefire here should distract us from the fact that Israel likely has a long counterinsurgency fight ahead of it.
So you say a long counterinsurgency fight ahead of it. The White House was making the case, though, today that they do not think that Hamas could carry out another October 7th again, that Israel has kind of debilitated Hamas to the point to where they could not launch another attack in that form ever again, or at least at any point soon. Do you take the White House at their word there?
Yeah, no, certainly. Just as al-Qaeda probably couldn't have carried out another 9/11 by 2005, 2006, but that didn't mean that we were going to stop the global war on terrorism. But the larger point here, though, is that I believe that the United States national security leaders are trying to impress upon Israel that this is not a binary choice of ceasefire or just all-out warfare with 2,000-pound bombs, that there is another option which looks very much like the wars that we have fought. And I do believe that that's what you'll see going on. It may not be another October 7th, but certainly Hamas will try with everything it can to continue to strike Israel.
I wonder could you imagine the scene if Benjamin Netanyahu goes into the halls of Congress and gives a speech, how he would be received among some within the Democratic Party?
I think it would be similar to what you saw at college campuses with people showing their protests. Do
you think Hakeem Jeffries would say, not here, not now, not at this point in time?
No, he would not. He would not force anyone to not exercise their First Amendment right.
What do you think that scene would be like?
Well, I want to take a step back because Benjamin Netanyahu has his own political problems at home. The fragility of his coalition has never been more great. And so he really is fighting for his political life. And that's the backdrop of the Israeli politics that we see. So Biden supporting him, gunning for this deal, he's hoping to thread the needle and say, hey, maybe the Israeli people are ready to kick out Benjamin Netanyahu, but here's an option where everybody wins.
And by the way, as a reminder, there are still Americans who are held hostage. There are hostages being held, and among them are still Americans. As the president makes this statement today, the negotiations continue. Keep that in the back of your mind constantly. Mick, Max, I think we're going to say goodbye to you here. Thank you both. Have a great weekend. Catch you soon.
Thanks so much, Blake. Thanks, Max.
Thanks again.
Yep. See you guys. All right, still more, though, here ahead on The Hill. Could you imagine getting your Amazon packages delivered by drone? Every time I say this, Stephanie does like a little fist pump. If you were to see Stephanie, she'd be fist pumping right now. How the federal government actually gave it. Show them the fist pump. Show them the fist pump. There you go. How the federal government actually gave Amazon a really big lift this week. We'll explain. Plus, who was and wasn't at the White House today when the Kansas City Chiefs celebrated their Super Bowl victory. You are watching The Hill here on NewsNation. Stay with us.
Tonight, a special edition of Banfield. Ashley's on the ground at CrimeCon, talking to some of the biggest names in true crime. Hear from the BTK killer's daughter, Gabby Petito's parents, JonBenét Ramsey's father, and more. Banfield tonight, only on NewsNation.
Drone, that right there, could actually be coming soon to your city later this year. Now, Amazon is expanding its drone program after receiving clearance from the FAA. Now, drone deliveries will now operate beyond the visual line of sight, meaning they will be allowed to fly out of the operator's range of sight in select test areas. Now, you can see them in action in west of Phoenix, Arizona later this year. Amazon, by the way, hopes its drones will be able to deliver some 500 million packages every year, a goal to reach of theirs by the end of the decade. So the federal government didn't block this. They're sort of allowing this to proceed forward. It seems like they got the backing of the feds
they
here.
love me.
They love you. This is your rule?
This is
More
for
Amazon.
Me. Yes.
What would you worry about as a mayor with this?
Well, logistics and God forbid one of them fall out of the sky on somebody's head. Like that would, that's always something you think
failure.
about.
What would you worry about as a member of Congress with this?
Well, my constituents being inconvenienced by accidents or failures, and also just maybe a certain amount of privacy concern. These craft, if they have cameras sort of peering into people's homes or that kind of thing.
And they're already in our homes.
Or they're at your front door.
Alexa's
certainly.
Inside.
Well, I don't have Alexa.
Yeah.
I don't do Siri. I don't do anything.
When I was covering the White House, no Alexa. I didn't have Alexa in my.
No.
Did you have an Alexa in your house when you were at the White House?
No, God, no.
Yeah, I wouldn't let it in.
No.
But this is interesting because you got to figure that the federal government. The FAA gave them a green light here. You got to figure at some point the Fed is going to put, or federal government's going to put regulations, standards, all of that.
Well, I mean, you do have serious, you'd have serious issues with landing rights, and what if one of them runs into a power line or an overhead cable, all those kinds of things, which is why they're going to test this. But I think the federal, one of the few times I'm going to see the federal government would be right to slow walk this and let's just take this in phases.
All right. Meantime, the Kansas City Chiefs continued a popular tradition in Washington today. For the second year in a row, they traveled to the White House to celebrate their back-to-back Super Bowl championships. But did you see this? During the photo shoot, some of the players encouraged the president to put the Chiefs helmet on, and he did just that at the White House a little while ago. Around the table we go. What do you see there from the president?
Get the man a jacket and let him put his shades back on. This hurts my heart.
Does it? Okay. What'd you see there?
Not sure this team really likes him, because that's not a great look for the president.
Okay. All right. What'd you see there?
A little sabotage.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely.
Huh. Well, it was notable. Harrison Butker, who trashed the kicker who trashed the president recently, he was there. At this event.
He was handing him the helmet.
Taylor Swift, for all we know, was not there at the event. Travis Kelce was there. What do you see?
I'm glad that we got to take the politics out of sports coming to the White House. It's a great honor. It's a great thing. And by the way, Joe Biden is old enough to know the Michael Dukakis rule. Don't put helmets on. No politician looks good.
It's interesting you say that, because when teams were boycotting Donald Trump, I would say at the time, I don't care who you are, what your politics are. If you could be in the presence of a president of the United States, or if you could be in the presence of the White House to actually go, like Harrison Butker hates the president, right? He was there today.
Yeah.
And I would say good on him and good on the president for not sort of making a scene out of those two being sort of close to each other. All right, speaking of competition, this was the moment. 12-year-old Bruhat Soma won the 96th annual Scripps National Spelling Bee last night. Thursday's competition ended in a spell-off. I didn't know this was the case, but there is this. Between the remaining two finalists, and was won by Soma when he spelled the word Sinif, C-S-C-I-N-I-P-H, correctly. Did you know Nan Hayworth is a veteran of the National Spelling Bee? She was the Times Spelling Bee champion. Look at that picture right there. That's little Nan. And so in honor of the National Spelling Bee coming to a close, we have our own political spelling bee for you, Nan. You ready?
Why? Okay.
You ready to go?
I'm looking at the prompter, but the word's not there.
The word's not in the prompter. Our team, I have a piece of paper here, and so we've hid this from you.
Mom and I haven't practiced in about 50 years.
Cephology, which, by the way, which I learned today, is
the study of elections.
The study of elections. Students of cephology will be studying the 2024 elections this school year, if you want to use it in a sentence. Cephology.
Yes.
Spell it for me.
Pollsters study cephology. P-S-E-P-H-O-L-O-G-Y. Cephology.
She nailed it. There you go.
Love it.
And I want to thank the writers of Veep for teaching me that word.
How hard is it to get ready for the spelling bee?
It's, you know what, it's
there it is. It's a noun, and you can use it as an adjective
and
as well.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus sings it brilliantly in Veep. But it's a grind. It's a lot of work for moms and dads. A lot of these kids are a little bit on the hothouse flower side. You know, they really kind of raise them up to spell. I happened to luck out in sixth grade, and I was just kind of a natural sort of, idiot savant. I could spell. And,
Come on, give yourself some credit.
And I was pert and tiny, as the article said, and I made it to about 12th in the National Bee. Went out on a word I knew.
What was the word?
Cataclysmic, which is not a difficult word to spell, and I started it the way you would catechism instead of CATA, and I don't know why.
Okay.
But
Catholics.
and I'm a Lutheran, so it's even worse. But but I was very blessed to do it 1 year.
Cephology, the study of elections. P-S-E-P-H-O-L-O-G-Y. Nan Hayworth gets it within seconds. All right, there we go. Woo. Coming up on the other side of the break, should the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg testify before Congress? Leland Vitter joins us. You're watching The Hill. Stay with us. All right, so before we say goodbye, here's a story that caught our eye. House Republicans are now demanding for the New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg and another prosecutor to testify up on Capitol Hill next month about former President Donald Trump's guilty verdict. The House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan is calling the hearing to examine, quote, the recent political prosecution of President Donald Trump by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. NewsNation's Joe Khalil reports that no subpoena has gone out just yet. At this point, it's still a request, but House Republicans added they won't hesitate to subpoena Bragg if they have to. Leland Vitter, host of On Balance. Hello. Do you think
this is the Republican Party that's supposed to believe in limited government and constitutional oversight?
I was just about to say, okay. I don't know how smart this is, considering it's like trying to out-Trump Trump, right? Like,
or out-brag.
I don't know what they're doing.
This is what's going to be interesting. You're seeing both parties right now try to perform, which is what this is, for their base.
Dig in, perform. Yep.
At what point? And I think the first person to realize this is going to have a significant advantage. Do they start talking about issues that non-political types actually care about?
Right.